As you may already know, my name's Clare Baker and I'm a former clutterholic and borderline hoarder. I successfully cleared all my clutter over 20 years ago without the need for an expensive home visit. And I've been helping people around the world do exactly the same ever since, so they too can know what it's like to live a completely clutter-free life forever. Now, I like to share my experiences both before and after I cleared my clutter to help fellow clutterholics and hoarders and their friends and family to illustrate some of the thoughts, feelings, and experiences that we have when we struggle with our clutter. What I share is not intended to be a judgment or criticism of anyone I mention, although I understand some people may take it that way. I share my experiences and perspective, which is a reflection from which I can share my learning with others who may have similar experiences. On Monday, the 25th of January, 1993, I got on a plane to travel to a little-known country called Guyana on the North Atlantic coast of South America, with just a return ticket, my passport, and 2 large bags full of my clothes, colouring books, and bicycle puncture repair kits. I was going there for 5 months of my gap year to volunteer in a Mothers Union daycare centre, live with local families, and experience real life in a different culture before going off to university. Little did I know, as I sat on that plane at Gatwick Airport with only the name of the bishop's wife and assurances in a letter that I would be met by someone at the airport and have a bed for the first night, that I'd fall in love with the country and return to Guyana every summer for the next 3 years. I know it makes me sound old, but youngsters today couldn't imagine getting on a plane without a digital device to stay constantly connected to others. I was going into the complete unknown, and it was a mixture of total fear and sheer excitement. I remember that feeling of not having any idea where I was going or what the next 5 months would hold for me. My school friends had gone off together traveling around Asia, and they intended to party hard. That didn't appeal to me. I wanted to experience real life in a different culture and country. I suppose I wanted to have that experience of having to sink or swim. As the saying goes, you don't know where your comfort zone ends until you step outside it. Well, I definitely did that. Through a contact at my local church, I had written to the Bishop of Guyana's wife, who was the president of the Mothers Union in Guyana, asking if there was any volunteer work that I could do. I received a reply letter that the Mothers Union had a daycare centre for children in the capital city, Georgetown, and I could help out at that. They had one daycare centre and were hoping to open a second one once they could staff and stock it. I thoroughly loved my time with the children. Little did I know that I would spend the next 3 years touring UK churches at weekends, giving talks about my experiences and collecting donations. It seems ironic now, but as I look back, I lived with so few possessions when I was in Guyana, yet I had never felt so free. I remember buying a Walkman with a Madonna cassette when I realised that although I loved Caribbean music, I also missed Western music. I also remember buying a pair of jeans in Guyana Stores Limited on the high street when I got tired of wearing shorts every day. They were a terrible fit. In Guyana, it was cheaper and better quality to have your clothes made to measure rather than buying off the rail. The following year, I returned for the summer with lots of fabric that I had bought from Liberty's in London to have dresses and a cocktail dress handmade for me for £5 or $7 each. It was ironic, given that I never wore cocktail dresses. Within a month of arriving in Guyana, I found myself in hospital for 2 weeks with food poisoning and malaria. I can still remember standing in the hospital hallway next to the only payphone, having discovered international reverse charge calls, speaking to my fraught parents who were trying to persuade me to medevac myself back to the UK. I told them no, I was having an amazing experience. I'd met some fantastic people and it was only food poisoning and malaria. When I went up into the Amazon rainforest for a week with the Mothers Union worker to visit a parish that had a British priest who had been there for decades, I took just a rucksack. My treat while there was to buy a bottle of Coca-Cola at the only store in the village. I swam in piranha-infested waters in the dark. Apparently, they only bite if you have an open wound. Or were they just telling me that to get me in the water? Guyana was only just starting to develop their eco-tourist industry back in 1993, and they weren't used to tourists. Consequently, Guyana was a time of experiences and memories for me, not stuff, which became a useful reference point for me when, years later, I was clearing my clutter. I remembered that it was the memories that made me happy, not the stuff. Guyana was probably the first time I really felt free from the pressures and expectations of others. I experienced firsthand what being the minority really means and feels like. I felt the guilt that Guyana was a former British colony and we hadn't treated them fairly. I learned how important it is to listen, learn, and respect the fact that people's different perspectives and experiences are important. I was supposed to just go to Guyana for 5 months, have an experience, then go off to university and move on with my life. But the country and the people drew me back every summer for 3 years. When back in the UK, I visited churches that were twinned with churches in Guyana. I talked about life in Guyana and collected donations of toys and money for the daycare centres so that the second one could open. I even did my university degree dissertation on the health system in Guyana, using my contacts at the hospital I'd stayed in. Guyana was such a huge and special chapter of my life. There were highs and lows with every trip I made out there, and it spanned 3 years on my life timeline, or 13% of my life at that time. Yet it's surprising that I don't need lots of physical things in my home now to trigger the memories. 25th of January 2023 is the 30th anniversary of me getting on that plane at Gatwick Airport, and 30 years since I faced the fear and did it anyway. An experience in my past that acted as a reminder that fear doesn't always lead to failure, negative experiences, or regret. Something that would help me later in life when I was clearing my clutter. Guyana is also a chapter in my life that came to its natural end as my life inevitably moved on. Again, a valuable reference point as I dealt with my clutter. I will always have my memories of my time in Guyana, and I hope one day to return and share them with my husband, proving that it's the people and memories of our past that really matter, not the souvenirs or stuff. If you want to learn how to capture the memories and meaning of the things in your clutter so that you can let go of the stuff, click on the link with this video and start your clutter clearing journey to your clutter-free life and future.